Come closer. The hollow has something for you tonight. The harbor is breathing slow, fog pressed low like a gray lid. The pier stretching out like a careful finger. You stand at its knuckle, listening, tasting a cold that remembers old keys. A long groan speaks from the water, not wind, not engine. A hull announcing itself without a throat, and everything in you answers by growing quiet. If your breath slows and the dark feels safe, follow my voice and subscribe. If you want to hear what the shadows will tell, next time, tell me where you are listening from. Whisper your city and country into the tide. Let the night draw a thin silver line to your window. Now dim the lights, perhaps light a candle, and drift with me into the story. Something moves beyond the breakwater, a black cut in the pale breath of the bay. Sails slack as if drowned, and yet the shape advances as though pulled by a promise or by your attention. You lift a hand to the fog, the damp kisses your palm. The silhouette becomes a vessel, ribs and mast surfacing in slow strokes. Familiar as a dream you insist you never had. By your boot a coil of rope waits, tied with a white bone charm. In a reef knot, smelling faintly of smoke and sea lavender. You do not remember placing it there. You nudge it with your toe. The charm turns and shows a notch like a bitten moon, then turns away again, as if preferring not to watch the ship. The fog is unfaithful, a lace that keeps choosing new patterns. For a breath you see 2 moons, then one, then none, and in the blank your breath counts itself. Slow, steady, the pier seems to breathe with you. When you hold, it holds. When you release, it answers. Somewhere behind you comes a single soft step. Heel toe, gentle as an apology. You do not turn. Some sounds prefer not to be looked at. The ship slides nearer with its strange quiet, not silence. A hush made of many small labors, hemp whispering, water writing, and erasing lines seems ticking after a long thought. Its sails hang, but a tremor runs through the cloth. A memory of wind rehearsed without wind. The prow lifts, dips, the bay accepts it, and erases the line immediately. You go to the last iron rings, where mooring ropes kiss the pier. Fog curls around your ankles, like a cat adopting you. Your wrist wears a thin cord bracelet you thought long lost. A charm of hammered tin, shaped as a lantern, warm against your skin, though the night is damp. It quivers once, then lies still. A horn moans beyond the point and falls short. The note dies at your feet like a string cut close to the knot. The vibration nests in the wood more than in the air. The hull shows at arm's length. Timber glossed with salt seems choked by pale growth. Kelp laid over the rail like wet hair. The figurehead is not a face, merely a folded shape like wings turned inward. along the bow. The idea of letters you try to read. Your eyes brim, the lines slide. The name refuses you politely, like a door that will not admit your shape. Either the ship is still and the harbor moves, or the ship moves and the harbor plays along. The lantern charm ticks, a small glass knock no wind explains. You glance down, your hands are quiet, and still the charm sways. You think of another lantern left somewhere years ago. A photograph you never took of a pier you cannot name. From the ship the door closes softly, though you never heard it open. The sound slips into the night like a book returned to the shelf that knows it. You expect the thud of docking, the shout, the rope. Instead, the plank beneath your right foot relaxes, as if the pier loosens a knot inside itself, making room for your breath. A gangplank lowers without hands, or you finally allow yourself to see that it has always been waiting. Its end rests a breath before your toes. Far off, a child's bell trembles once, not the buoy. Something worn on a wrist like yours. Two tiny sounds answering across a room of fog. Behind you, the town adjusts its posture. A light blinks and returns changed. The bakery door appears on the opposite wall. You smell bread that will be baked tomorrow. You could walk back stairs to the square. A bed with your breath pressed into the pillow, but your name feels heavy tonight, silted with old tide. Reluctant to lift, the bone charm rolls to the pier's edge and stops, held by nothing you can. Name held anyway. You lay your hand on the gangplank. Cold travels up your arm like thoughtful. Water. Finding the soft places where you keep your fear and touching them with the respect of distance. Words rise and break before they reach your mouth. You let them sink and listen. The fog pauses with you, and in that shared stillness, the ship breathes once. You breathe once. The bay breathes once. The rhythm aligning like three sleepers, turning the same small dream. You are not afraid. Not exactly. Fear is a sharp shape. Tonight prefers roundness. The corners of things padded with old cloth. You think of the lantern you left behind in some other chapter of yourself. Its glow still leaking through. A thread that could be followed by someone who will never know your name. The plank waits. The night leans close, and the silence asks you to choose how you will listen. From the far end of the pier comes the faint echo of footsteps. Not nearing, not leaving, simply existing, because you do. You look into the water, searching for your reflection. Finding instead the color the sky plays just before rain, and the suggestion of a face that could be yours if you were slightly different. For a moment, everything balances on a seam. Harbor and ship, you and you, stitched lightly with fog. A thread drawn across your palm by invisible hands. You exhale, and the seam loosens. The ship is here, and not. Both truths aloud, like the moons that doubled for a breath. And learn to be single again. You stand at the threshold, and the threshold stands at you, each naming the other, each lending the other a small, patient breath. The gangplank listens as your weight passes over it, each board exhaling, answering your steps with old breath. You cross like a slow confession, and the harbor falls away behind you. Without protesting, you place your palm on the rail. The wood is wet, not with rain. A seam of warmth runs beneath the grain, as if a hand had rested there just before yours, as if it still prefers the shape of someone not seen. You look along the deck, masts like unlit candles, ropes in obedient coils, hatches shut, the tidy quiet of a place. Put to bed by careful hands only. There are no hands, no boots, no faces waiting in the fold of. Sail the hammock, moves under its own small moon. 1, 2, 3 sways, then stillness. You hear the faintest sigh from fabric. A valley where a shoulder once was smooth as sleep. By the mainmast hangs a rosary of fish bones and rusted bells. One bell sewn shut with red thread. You touch the bones and feel nothing. Yet somewhere a silver chime takes one step toward you, then stops, courteous, undecided. A porcelain cup stands beside the companionway, tea gone dark as harbor water. A single leaf turns. By itself. The ring beneath it is still warm. When you lift the cup, the wood shows a circle of dryness, as if the ship drank the rest for itself. You speak a small hello. The sound walks to the bow, and does not return. You move along the port, side, counting knots without intending to. 13, then 12, then 13 again. The rope insists there is no difference, and your breath agrees. On the deck, near the hatch, wet footprints appear left, right, left, as if someone rose carefully from the sea and walked toward the mast. The prints end where the shadow begins. You step beside them, and they pale, then vanish. Taking a stranger's stride with them, something knuckles the hull. From within, a polite tapping 3 times, then quiet. The ship apologizes for having bones. The lantern charm at your wrist ticks. Once, the tiny metal warms against your skin. You remember the lantern you forgot in another harbor. Of yourself. How its glow used to reach only as far as your hands, and then a little farther. When you ached for it, you glanced toward the town, but the rooftops have traded places with the pier posts. The square sits where the water should be. The bell tower stands in a tide line, like a patient swimmer, smiling, waiting, The rigging exhales a note that has not learned its name. You tell yourself it is wood settling. The ship accepts your answer with gratitude. A narrow door waits at the base of the foremast. A door you are certain was not there a moment ago. Its latch shaped like a small eye, closed, dreaming. You do not open it. The not opening becomes its own kind of entry, and the ship seems satisfied. Across the deck, a pack of cards lies face down. The backs carry a compass rose missing the north. You turn the top card and see a harbor from childhood. Except the lighthouse points inward, at a house that looks like yours. A light in an upstairs window. You blink and the card is blank. The air changes temperature without moving. Shadows gather as if beckoned by a quiet bell. You listen for footfalls, hear only tide, and yet the impression remains. Someone just stepped through you, borrowing a little warmth. Leaving thanks without language. At the starboard rail, tiny glass bottles dangle from twine, each holding a shred of fogged labels written in cramped hands you cannot quite read. The bottle that might hold your name taps the plank twice, like a knuckle, like a considerate heartbeat. A brass plate near the wheel has been eaten by salt. When you include the letters swim, then range into the date of tomorrow and the hour of just before dawn. You taste iron and something like rosemary. You straighten and the plate returns to nonsense. No crew on deck. And yet an order prevails, lines adjusted, knots asleep. The neatness of labor recently finished, the careful presence of hands that have only now withdrawn, not gone, merely standing just beyond your agreement to see. You find the ship's bell, its clapper threaded with red silk. The knot closed with a single hair, perhaps yours, perhaps borrowed. The bell refuses to ring. It prefers whispering. If you press your ear to it, you hear sand sliding through a thin neck. Not an hourglass, something older. You close your eyes and feel the deck under your soles. Wood pulsing, tide swaying, perhaps someone walking by, barnacles combing sleep from stone eyelids, all of it gentle, allowing you to be carried, to be a listener. When you open your eyes, the wheel has turned half a degree, then stopped. The shadow of a grip remains upon the spoke. You feel the humor of whoever released it. The small tease of a companion who enjoys your listening. You walk aft, and the distance repeats itself. Every 10 steps, the same barrel appears, the same coil of line, the same stain shaped like a sleeping fish. The ship is looped tonight, a soft circle that keeps. You near without owning you. You thank it under your breath. The words enter the wood and do not return. At the stern, a net hangs like a curtain, woven from thin winters. Shells knotted into it clack like prayer beads. One shell holds a droplet of light, as if water remembered to glow. You raise a finger. The droplet leans, then decides to stay. When you turn, the deck presents itself again. Formal and empty, intimate and tended. No crew, and yet companionship everywhere. You are not alone. You are not watched. You are included, gently, the way a page includes silence between sentences. The way the lantern you left behind still braids a path toward you from some shore that has forgiven everything. Your bracelet hums once, a note you feel in the bone, and you know the next step will take you below, where rooms keep different names depending on who listens. But for now you remain, breathing with the deck, letting the hush count your ribs, accepting the welcome of an absence that behaves like a hand on your shoulder, warm, steady, unhurried. The deck beneath you sways in a rhythm not quite in step with the tide, as though the ship were listening to a different sea, one you cannot hear. You follow the gentle roll, your balance shifting, without thought, until you find yourself at the bow, where the figurehead waits like a secret not yet told. It is not carved into a face, not into any form, you know. Rather, it folds inward, like wings shielding something too delicate to be seen, or perhaps too dangerous to meet your eyes. Just below, the nameplate rests. It's brass, so dulled by salt it almost disappears into the hull. And yet you can't help but try to read it. You lean closer, and the letters rise, not in one clear line, but in a shimmer, slipping, changing, like they have not decided who they want to be. For a breath you are certain. They form a word you have heard before. The name of a town you left behind. A street where the wind used to smell of clove and bread. You blink, and it is gone. Now it spells a shape you cannot pronounce. Your tongue would break trying. Then again it shifts, and all the letters scatter, like startled birds taking to the air. You step back, and for a moment the nameplate appears utterly blank, as though it has never carried a name at all. Something about that blankness draws you. A vessel without a name is a vessel without an anchor to memory. It could be anything. It could be everything. It could already belong to you, without you ever asking. A ripple touches the bow, not water, not wind. It is as if the ship itself shivered, and the metal of the nameplate sighed in answer. You glance toward the harbor, but the town is pale now, a smudge of roofs and chimneys in the mist. You try to picture your own door, the key in your hand, but the image slides, turns into a corridor below deck that you have not yet walked. When you look back, there is movement, not on the deck, but inside the reflection on the nameplate. A shadow, almost like yours, except it stands with its head turned toward the water. And its mouth is moving. You cannot hear the words, only the faintest hiss of breath. And then, as if sensing you, The shadow turns. Its face is blank, not empty, but holding something that has yet to arrive. The sight does not frighten you. Instead, it feels like looking at the edge of a dream, one you are still deciding whether to enter. The ship lists slightly, and the letters on the plate pool together, forming a single mark. It is not a word, not in the way you understand. It is a knot of curves and points, a symbol that stirs the part of your mind that remembers before remembering. You trace it in the air with your finger, and the metal warms beneath your gaze, as though the ship approves of your attempt. A quiet settles in your chest, the kind that comes not from safety, but from recognition, as if you have just remembered that you once knew this place, and had simply been away too long. You rest your palm against the bow. The grain of the wood feels alive, breathing under your touch. You can almost feel the ship's attention turn toward you, not demanding, not asking, simply including you. The fog thickens at the edges of your sight, and when you look again, the nameplate is no longer visible at all, only smooth wood, as though the ship has decided you don't need to read it anymore. You step back, and the figurehead seems to shift slightly, its folded shape tilting, not enough to be sure, but enough to make you feel as though it has acknowledged you. The air smells different now. Less of salt, more of something faintly sweet, like petals pressed between pages of a book too long shut. The scent pulls you toward the midship, where the deck darkens beneath the shadow of a single swinging lantern, but the bow still calls to you. A presence that feels older than tide, older than the shore. And as you turn away, you realize you are carrying that symbol in your mind, and no matter how you try, you cannot picture it clearly. It slips every time you grasp it, yet leaves behind the certainty that it is yours. The ship rocks again, and in that motion, you hear the softest sound, like a single word spoken underwater. A word you might one day remember, but not tonight. You leave the bow, the name, the shadow, and whatever the ship chose to hide from you, and walk toward the lone swinging light ahead. It hangs at the edge of the gangway, a single lantern suspended by a length of fraying rope, its brass frame dulled to a greenish shadow of gold, glass smudged as though fingers have pressed. From the inside, it swings without wind, without touch, yet every motion feels measured, purposeful, as if the lantern is choosing where to throw its glow. The light is not steady. It comes in thin pulses, like the slow heartbeat of something that sleeps with one eye open. You notice that each flicker lingers on certain places, a coil of rope, a dark knot in the deck, the rail beside your hand. It feels as though the lantern is showing you something, but in a language you do not yet understand. You step closer. the wood beneath your feet changes tone here, softer, almost hollow. Your heel presses down, and the sound beneath is not water, but a low, muffled echo, a suggestion of space, a chamber hidden under the planks. The lantern turns toward you. A slow arc, light pooling over your face, and for a heartbeat you see something inside the glass. Not a flame, but the shape of a mouth, lips moving, whispering in a rhythm that your bones seem to recognize. You lean in, the glass fogs slightly, as though your breath and the lantern share the same air. The whispering stops, and for a long moment, the light simply waits. You realize you've been holding your breath, and when you let it go, the lantern swings away, as if politely excusing itself. Its glow stretches over the rail, casting a path along the water, and you follow it with your eyes, out there, just beyond the shadow of the hull. The water does not behave like the rest of the bay. It moves in circles, concentric, deliberate, as though stirred from below by a slow, unseen hand. The center of those circles is darker, a shade that swallows reflection. When the lantern's light touches it, the darkness ripples, and a shape almost rises, but then the lantern swings back, and the surface looks harmless again. You reach for the rope that holds the lantern. It is warm under your fingers, and the fibers hum faintly. The vibration travels up your arm, and you realize it is in time with your pulse, or perhaps your pulse is following it. You think of loosening the knot, taking the lantern in hand. But a small hesitation roots your feet. It feels wrong to separate it from the ship, as if doing so would make you visible to something that prefers not to see you just yet. The lantern swings again, and this time the light pools over the door to the companionway. A door that was shut moments ago is now ajar, just enough to reveal darkness. Darkness that does not behave like the night outside. It is thick, textured, the kind of dark that feels as though it might cling to you if you stepped into it. The lantern lingers on that door, and you feel the air grow still. Even the tide seems to pause, as if the whole harbor is listening to what you will do. You kneel to look closer at the lantern. Inside the glass, the mouth has returned. It is not human, not exactly. Its shape seems to shift each time the light pulses, and though you cannot hear it now, you have the strange certainty that it is repeating the same phrase again and again, a phrase meant for you. You try to read the lips, and for an instant you think you do. A single word, but it vanishes from memory before you can hold it, leaving only the echo of knowing. Without the knowledge itself, your hands tighten on the rail. The brass of the lantern seems to lean toward you, like an animal scenting your breath. Then, abruptly, it swings away, It's like tracing the far end of the deck, where the shadow of the mast falls. And in that shadow, something moves. A slight bending, as though the shadow were fabric, and someone on the other side just brushed their hand against it. You step back, the movement stops, and the shadow returns to being only shadow. The lantern comes to rest, its rope twisting slightly, settling into a slow, hypnotic sway. You stand watching it, minutes stretching into a soft blur. The air is cool here, but your skin feels warm, like you have been standing in sunlight. And yet, the only glow is the lanterns, and even that seems to prefer the darkness. Eventually, the light steadies. The pulses grow slower, as if the lantern is falling asleep, or pretending to. You find yourself mirroring it, your eyes half closed, your breath lengthening. The rest of the ship recedes, until there is only you, and the swinging glow, and the space between swings. The pauses, where the dark is thick enough to feel. You think of stepping away, but every time you lean back, the lantern sways toward you again, like a gentle hand on your arm, asking you to stay just a little longer. And you do, because here, under this slow light, the rest of the world feels very far away. And the silence is not empty, but full of things that mean you no harm, so long as you listen. When at last you turn, the door to the companionway is fully open. The darkness inside waits, patient. It will not close again until you have gone below. And though the thought should bring unease, you feel instead a quiet inevitability, the kind you feel in dreams, when you know you will step forward, because stepping back has already been forgotten. The lantern swings one last time, casting its glow just far enough to reach the first step down. And in that narrow circle of light, you think you see the mouth again. Still moving, still shaping that same word you cannot keep. You place your foot on the step, the wood sighs beneath your weight, and the lantern's glow follows you, as though to be sure you are not entering alone. You breathe once at the threshold of the stairs, then twice, then a third time for luck you don't believe in, but respect anyway. The lantern's last glow sighs behind you, and you enter the dim below. The air tastes of rope and old rain, of cedar kept quiet by salt. Each step yields a soft answer, not a creak, more like a yes spoken into cloth. You count without wanting to. 11, 12, then 11 again. The numbers puddle and exchange faces, and you accept the trade the way you accept tide. At the landing you pause, the corridor. Ahead wears to directions, left and right, yet both pour forward, like a river that has forgotten how to branch. You choose, or the ship chooses through your hand, and your shoulder brushes the wall. Which is warmer than walls? Usually are. As if it kept someone's recent back pressed into it. A lingering silhouette of heat. You hear it then, the tread you sought since the pier. The one that learned your breathing. Footsteps. Soft, considerate. A weight sliding through the wood with care. They come from the dim ahead, steady. Not hurried. You stop, and they stop. You let breath out, a thread cut. Close, and they begin again. The ship listens between each step, inserting silence the way a careful seamstress fits cloth to a secret shape. You walk. The footsteps keep gentle pace just beyond sight. Like a companion who prefers the kindness of not being seen. You pass doorways with hanging tags. None of them hold letters. Only small symbols drawn in salt. A spiral, a wing, a knot with 13 turns. A spoon, a lighthouse leaning toward itself. When you look away and look back, the symbols have moved. Or perhaps they always stood where they stand now. The ship dislikes being caught arranging under your left palmar rail runs, wrapped with worn linen, embroidered with thread faded to the color of dusk. Your fingers graze a pattern and know it as a lullaby. Though you cannot hum it, you only recall the ease it once gave to breathing. The footsteps pause, then resume a little nearer. You do not turn. The ship is generous to the patient. You follow, and the corridor deepens. You pass a cabin with its door ajar. A teacup inside, full, not steaming, but not cold. A single petal floats, refuses to sink. On the floor, a pair of boots stands with its laces tied into a marriage of knots. No feet own them, and yet the leather sags in the shape of a long day. You move on, and the cup makes a sound without moving. That thin porcelain kiss of expectation. The footsteps lead you to a bulkhead painted in a color that reminds you of stalled dawn. No door interrupts the surface. Yet a threshold hums. You can sense it. The way you sense a word arriving before you remember it. Your hand meets the paint, and the paint sighs. The bulkhead releases a seam and opens not like a door, like a book deciding you have finally turned to the right page. Inside is a narrow passage, almost not there. You have to step sideways, shoulders brushing canvas, and the air smells like rain stored for winter. The footsteps enter ahead of you. You know it because the boards curl a little. Pleased, and then relax. You think of the bracelet at your wrist, the small lantern charm, and find your hand already stroking it. The metal is warm as a living thought. You imagine it glowing. It does not, yet the passage brightens anyway, not with light. With understanding, you reach a small chamber, a room that pretends to be bigger when you do not measure it. A bug nestles along one wall, sheets folded with devotion. The hollow of a shoulder still pressed into the pillow. On the opposite wall, a peg carries a coat, salt wrinkled. Inside the pocket a stone rests, smooth, pierced naturally. A hagstone, a looking hole made by sea patience. You lift it and peer through. The hole shows the corridor. Behind you, except the corridor, has no you in it, only the idea of a you, the outline of your waiting. The footsteps circle the bunk, though you cannot see a body to draw such a circle. Dust does not rise, only the suggestion of presence stirs the sheets, as if history turned over in sleep. You speak a hello stitched with thank you. And the room approves by smelling, briefly of rain on dry leaves. On the desk rests a length of red thread, tied into a modest knot. Beside it, a tiny bowl of salt, and 3 small feathers, black, white, gray, like choices waiting to be named. You do not touch the knot. Your hands remember other knots, the reef securing a bone charm, the knot your name makes when spoken in a hurry, the knot at the base of a throat. That read a goodbye without ink. The footsteps retreat then, a few paces down the hall. Pausing, inviting, you follow, and the chamber allows you to go, keeping for itself only that brief scent of rain. Another door greets you with a handle, war as a palm. Within, the galley, quiet as a chapel after the meal. Bowls, stacked, a ladle sleeping in its hook. A loaf sits with a single slice missing. The cut does not stale. No time grows on it. It simply waits, tooth marks sketched into air rather than bread. As if the bite was imagined and the imagining counted as eating on the table. Someone has drawn a circle in spilled sugar. Within it, 2 sets of prints, not hands, not paws. Small, spidery, elegant, facing one another as if exchanging a promise. You tilt your head, and the sugar shines like frost. The circle remains intact even when a draft should. Have erased it. The ship protects certain agreements. The footsteps leave the galley, lead you past a locker that hums like a hive. You touch it, feel the vibration in your bones, and it answers with silence as soon as you decide to call it song. Past another door, you see crates labeled with dates that have not arrived. Within the slats glows a sleep blue, the color of calm. Taught carefully to fever, the steps draw you to a ladder that climbs to a mid-level you did not remember passing. Up you go, one hand, then the other, the lantern charm ticking against the wood. A small heartbeat rehearsing itself. At the top, a narrow hall turns once, then returns to itself. Here the footsteps sharpen, then soften, as if someone changed shoes in kindness to you. A mirror hangs at the end, framed in rope gilded by touch. You look and find your face as it would appear after a long voyage you have not yet taken, calmer, with a new hollow where worry used to nest. Behind your reflection, Nothing moves. Yet, when you lower your head, a second you keep standing still, listening for a sound you cannot hear. You lift your head, and both images align again. The ship decides the experiment has taught you enough. You speak to the footsteps. Ask them where they wish you to go. They answer by walking away, but not far. Just to a door bound with a strip of sailcloth. You understand, open it, and enter a room barely lit by a bowl of phosphorescence. On the floor, chalk lines describe a modest map, pier, town, cliff, shoal, and a ship that could be this one, or the shadow of this one. The footsteps step into the chalk ship, and the bowl of light ripples, throwing starry flecks onto the ceiling, where moths have left their opinions in powdered whispers. You stand in the drawn harbor and feel a strange rightness. You are exactly where the chalk says. You are exactly where the sea pretended you weren't. The footsteps circle you, their weight careful, adoring the quiet between your ribs. You begin to hum the lullaby your fingers traced earlier, without notes, without tune, only breath placed in order like shells along a moon path. Something shifts. A hatch breathes in the ceiling, and the air cools. The footsteps step up the wall. Impossible. Soft, amused, leaving. No marks, only the knowledge that gravity is another word for habit. You smile into the dim, and the room grows a fraction wider for having earned your smile. When you leave, the chalk map remains, except your print within it fades before your eyes. Gracious, private, as if the ship refuses to archive you without permission. Back to the hall. The footsteps are close now, right behind your left shoulder. You feel warmth hover, the kind that does not touch, but still convinces your skin it is held. You whisper thank you again, and your voice returns from the boards with a hush that sounds like you nodded. Down another ladder, this one gentler, each rung remembering the last hand that trusted it. At the base, a door opens onto the hold, where cargo sleeps. Upright like monks, tarps cover shapes you cannot name without waking them. Between crates, footprints appear, glistening faintly. Not wet, not dry. A third condition. The kind of mark a tide might leave on an idea. You kneel. Align your boot beside one. The stranger's foot is almost your foot. Only the arch is higher, the step a little braver, or perhaps only more practiced at pretending bravery. The footsteps lead deeper, to the aftermost bend, where sound learns manners. Here hangs a length of rope, braided with gray hair, bells tied along it in modest intervals. No bell rings, but the rope hums. And you know, if any bell were to speak aloud, the corridor would shy away. The ship dislikes sharpness. It prefers the gentler grammar of hush. You stand within the hanging bells, and for a breath you are threaded like a charm. The footsteps cease, not gone, only paused, and you realize they are waiting for you to take one step onward, to choose a door that does not announce itself. You turn, eyes closed, let your fingers point, and feel the ship agree. A panel you thought was wall slides aside, revealing a spare cabin, the smallest yet, just large enough for a bed, a shelf, a mirror the size of a letter. On the shelf rests a single shoe, polished, unworn. It faces the door like a question, with an easy answer. You understand without knowing how this room is for whoever has not boarded yet, or for a version of you that missed the tide. Either way, the bed is made, and the sheet holds the cool of a promised morning. The footsteps start again, leading out, back along the woven path of doors. Softer now, as if the ship has accepted your listening and needs to prove nothing. They slow at the base of the ladder, to the deck, and stop. You place your foot on the first rung, and then you hear the last step, not behind you, ahead, on the open boards above. Like a welcome, you feel rather than see. You climb into the night, bringing with you the gentle knowledge that something has walked with you, matched to your breath, agreeing to remain implied rather than revealed. On the deck, the sky wears a thinner fog, stars guessed rather than counted. The lantern you left sways once, like a nod between friends. You stand in the hush that follows, and discover that the rhythm of the steps is still inside your chest, a quiet metronome, a way to measure the distance between what you can name and what you will allow. You walk forward, and the boards under you answer, not as a floor, but as a companion. The hatch closes behind you with a sigh, not a sound of finality, more like the soft turning of a page. The air below is denser now, cooler near the floor, warmer where the ceiling leans low. As if the heat and cold have been carefully braided together, the corridor tilts just slightly to starboard, but each step you take seems to even it out, until the next step tilts it the other way. Your eyes insist the planks are straight. Your body insists they are not. The first cabin door waits on your left, a modest plank with no markings. You open it, and the room beyond is small, tidy. A cot against the wall, a desk bolted in place. A single cup sits upside down. No dust, no watermarks. You step inside, turn once to look back toward the corridor. And when you turn again, the cot has moved to the opposite wall, the desk now beneath the porthole. The cup stands upright, full of water that trembles without spilling. You leave the room and close the door behind you. The corridor feels longer now, the next door farther than it should be. You walk, and the walls lean in not unkindly, just enough to remind you that you are being guided. The second cabin is darker, lit only by the blue glow of something under the bed. You kneel and see a lantern, its flame moving too slowly, as though it were not burning, but dreaming. You reach for it, and the bed above your head creaks. By the time you stand, the lantern is gone, and the walls smell faintly of burnt sugar. The door closes itself. The corridor is different again. You now face a stairwell that wasn't there before. It leads downward, but the shadows climbing up toward you seem lighter than the ones at your feet, as though the ships. Darkness is leaking upward from below. You descend, counting 5 steps, then 7, then 3, until you are in another hall, this one lined with doors on both sides. Some are ajar, others sealed with rope. One has been painted entirely black, including the handle. You choose the one nearest. Inside, an armoire stands with both doors open, revealing only the back panel, smooth, unbroken. When you close the armoire, a narrow passage waits inside, where the back should be. You step through, emerging into a cabin you do not remember entering. And yet it smells faintly of you, like clothing dried near your breath. The bed here is made with a quilt stitched in uneven squares. Every piece of fabric seems taken from a different shore. Faded maps, shirt cuffs, fragments of sails. Your fingertips find one scrap embroidered with a symbol from the ship's nameplate. It warms beneath your touch, and when you blink, the cabin's window looks out not onto the harbor, but into another cabin across the corridor, where someone is standing at the foot of a bed, watching the door. Waiting for you to open it, you step back. The quilt folds over itself, as though pulled by unseen hands. The window shows only fog. Again, returning to the corridor, you notice it no longer leads where it should. Instead, the floor curves in a slow arc, and the air smells of candle wax. A door ahead stands open, and the sound of dripping water pulls you closer. Inside, a wash basin sits in the center of the floor. The water within is black, but each drop falling into it is pale, luminous. They vanish on contact, leaving no ripple, no mark. On the wall above, a mirror hangs crooked, showing the basin, and you, and behind you, a doorway that isn't there. When you turn, the door to the corridor has closed. When you open it, you are not where you began. The hall is shorter, ending at a single hatch. You open it, step through, and find yourself back at the first cabin you entered. Only now it is not empty. The cot holds an impression of a body, as though someone rose just before you arrived. The cup of water on the desk is gone. In its place is a folded scrap of paper, still damp. You open it, and there, written in a hand you almost recognize, is a single sentence. Stay on the path. That moves, the ship groans softly, not from strain, but from approval. You tuck the note into your pocket and step back into the corridor, which begins to change again, eager to see if you have learned how to follow a moving path. The corridor curves toward a narrow door bound with a single red thread. It's not tied, only laid across the latch, a suggestion rather than a lock. You lift it. The thread clings briefly to your skin before curling on the floor like a sleeping creature dot inside. The air feels prepared for reading. A desk stands beneath a porthole whose glass turns the moon to cloudy milk. At the center of the desk rests a journal, bound in sea-dark leather. Its edges rubbed smooth. A ribbon bookmark carries a small bone charm shaped like a lantern, older, heavier than the one at your wrist. You don't sit. The room prefers you standing. Your fingers rest on the cover. The leather yields slightly, warm. When you open the first page, words bloom where there was only pale paper. The handwriting is almost yours, the same angles, but bolder, less. Afraid of the margin. The ship has come in without crew. You will open this journal at a careful hour and think the ink is still wet. And it is, glistening faintly. You lift the page, but the ink leaves no mark on your fingers. More lines appear. Do not chase the name. Let it find you. If the lantern asks a question you cannot keep, answer anyway. It likes to hear you try. A drawing follows, a knot you don't know. Its loop turning inward twice, but never tangling. When you blink, it becomes a coastline, then a closed eye, then the knot again. The next page carries today's date, written moments ago. The rooms will change. Take no door that insists. Choose doors that wait. In the corner, a faint square of dryness, as if a fingertip rested there long before you touched it. Something shifts in the corridor, the sound of careful footfalls. You read faster. If you read too quickly, the ship will fold. It dislikes being overtaken. Read at the pace of tide. You slow, and the letters round, as if approving. You turn to a page where the ink forms a small note in the margin. When you reach the mirror, breathe first. The image will be kind, but honest. Another page resists turning, sticky with intent. The footfalls pause when you do. They're matching you as the sea matches the shore. Your chest loosens. You whisper a thank you, and the wood of the desk feels warmer. A sketch of a hand appears, palm lines labeled harbor, door, sleep. You if you had waited longer. Between them, tiny drawn boats drift, each with a lit lamp. Choose any channel, the caption says. They all slow to the same mouth. You flip toward the back. The journal resists again, then allows it. A final set of entries appear, dated in months not yet lived. On the next moon, open the bottle with your name only when the tide says please. On the fog that follows, tie a bow in your shadow where it thins. On the night you forget to be afraid, let the ship take you where it knows. You belong. You close the book halfway. The ribbon charm sways and leaves a thin dusting of salt on the page dotting the inside cover. A hidden pocket waits. You open it to find a single folded sheet. A map, but not of any coastline. Its lines branch like veins, each labeled with words you've used when you needed forgiveness. Almost, soon, not yet. At the center, the same symbol from the nameplate, pressed into the paper as if by teeth. You touch it, and the paper warms. The branches tremble, then still, from the corridor. The sound of footsteps returns, softer this time. The journal closes the rest of the way under its own weight, but not in refusal. A line etches itself across the cover before your eyes. Bring me. You will need someone to believe you later. You tuck the journal under your arm. The red thread, now curled on the floor, lifts slightly in the draft and knots itself loosely around the book's spine when you step into the corridor. The air smells faintly of rosemary and old letters. The path ahead is new. A stair rises toward somewhere brighter. You climb, the journal warm against your ribs, certain now that it remembers more of you than you have yet lived. The stairs rise into a hall that smells of cedar and faint smoke, the kind that lingers hours after a candle is pinched out. The boards beneath your feet are narrower here, as if the ship wanted you to step more carefully. And perhaps it does. At the far end, a door waits. Its wood is dark as tide-wet oak, almost black. You place your palm against it, and for a moment the grain is gone. Smooth as a window, but colder. A breath passes under your hand that is not your own. Then the wood remembers itself again. The hinges open without sound. The captain's quarters are wide, though the air is close. It smells of paper dried in salt air, and something faintly metallic, like the breath of old coins. Charts lie rolled on a table, their edges curled into slow spirals. You can see where the ink has gone thin, as though the lines themselves tried to fade to keep their secrets. A compass sits in the center, lid closed. Its brass warm to the touch when you brush a finger across it. A coat hangs on the wall, its sleeves creased into the shape of arms that no longer fill them. The fabric smells of storms, and of somewhere you've been only in a dream. And there against the far wall, a mirror. Tall, unframed, leaning slightly forward, as though it were listening for your name. Its surface catches the pale light from the porthole, but doesn't throw it bar. CK, it swallows it, softens. It, turning brightness into something the eyes can rest inside. You step closer. In its glass, the harbor is visible, not the faint suggestion you remember from the deck, but whole, clear, the pier stretch. Place out beneath a low fog lamps. Hang at careful intervals. They're like gold, and tired, you see the dark water, the swaying ropes, the glint of wet cobblestone on the shore beyond. You look for your reflection there, for the version of you standing on that dock earlier. Tonight, but the pier is empty, completely, as if your arrival never happened. A strange quiet moves through you. Not fear. More like when the tide goes out farther than you expected, and the air around you changes shape. You glance back toward the real porthole. Outside, there is only fog. A wall of gray. Yet the mirror insists the harbor is still there. Without you in it, the absence feels deliberate, polite. As if the glass is giving the pier back to itself, free of the weight you carried onto it. The journal in your arm has grown warm aga. In. You open it, turning to the note you read below decks. The image will be kind, but honest. And it is. Kind in how it erases you. Honest in showing how easily the place you left continues without you. The fog in the glass shifts. Shapes begin to move along the dock. Figures blurred by distance, working slowly. Some carry crates, others coil rope. A few lean over the rail to watch the water. Not one of them glances toward where you should be. They don't look for you. They don't even notice the space you once filled. You take another step toward the mirror. The glass cools the air against your skin. For an instant, there you are, but not the you from tonight. Older, clothed in a heavy coat. It seems silvered with salt. Your hair windswept, your face calmer, as if it has weathered a long patience. That other you looks toward the place you stand now, then past you. To some horizon the mirror doesn't show, and begins to fade like breath on cold glass. You raise your hand without deciding to. When your fingertips touch the mirror, the harbor ripples. The figures vanish into the fog. The dock dissolves. What replaces it is not the shore you left, but another entirely. A pale beach, covered in stones carved with marks. Symbols you don't know, but almost understand. They line the tide's edge like an unfinished sentence. Beyond them, a low house waits. Its walls are the color of driftwood. Only one window glows a deep, honey-colored light. It looks as though someone inside has been expecting you for a long while. The journal's rib. Uncharmed taps the glass. A small reminder. You step back. The beach fades. The carved stones scatter into the fog. And the harbor returns, still empty. You stand there, breathing slow. The glass can show where you've been, where you weren't, and where you might still arrive. None of it frightens you. It feels like a loosening, a kind of freedom you didn't know you were missing. You glance at the desk. Among the curled charts lies a folded scrap of paper, its edges dark with water stains. You open it. The lines inside are not a map of coast or current, but a drawing of the very mirror before you, TH. E-harbor scene already sketched inside. Its frame. At the bottom is a note in the same bold hand from the journal. Step forward only when you're willing to see yourself from both sides. You fold the paper and slip it into the journal. The leather binding feels heavier now, like it has swallowed the image for safekeeping. You turn back to the mirror one last time. The harbor is dimmer, the fog thicker, but in the far distance, you think you see movement again, not on the dock, but in the water. A ripple, deliberate, like a slow hand pulling something closer. The glass blurs, keeping the rest from view. You take a single step toward it, enough to see your own reflection again. It is only you this time. Your face, lit by the ship's quiet light. Your expression unreadable, but steady. You breathe once, the way the earlier page instructed. In that breath, the mirror's surface darkens, reflecting nothing now but the room behind you. The captain's quarters are still. The porthole is only fog. You turn toward the door. As you leave, the mirror tilts almost imperceptibly, as though adjusting to keep you in its gaze a moment longer. Not to trap you, not to follow, simply to remember you, exactly as you were in the breath before you changed again. The corridor from the captain's quarters breathes you back toward the open air. Each step carries the hush of the mirror with it. That's strange. Weightless quiet you feel after staring at something that almost spoke. You push open the hatch. Night air folds over you, cool and damp. The deck glistens, as though the fog has been combed into its grain. Above, the sails hang like long breaths that forgot to finish exhaling. The harbor's faint lights are smudges now, barely pushing through. The mist. You walk toward the bow without thinking to choose the direction. Your boots tap a slow rhythm against the boards, but under that sound is another, a deeper, softer pulse, as if the tide itself is keeping time at first. You mistake it for the natural push and pull of the sea. Then you notice it doesn't match the water around the hull. The rhythm is closer, more deliberate. It's speaking, and the words are yours. You pause at the starboard rail. Below, the black surface shivers in gentle circles. Not from current, from something beneath, moving just enough to be felt. A sound rises from those circles, not a voice in the way you know voices, but a shape in the air, woven from the cadence of your own speech. It speaks with your inflections, your breath, your hesitations. The first words it shapes are soft, almost formless. Stay, then a pause. Wait until the next moon. Your grip on the rail tightens. It isn't frightening. It's unsettling in a way that feels oddly intimate, like overhearing yourself tell a secret you didn't know you carried. You lean closer, careful not to let your reflection break. The tide below tilts its rhythm, adding a note of insistence. If you leave now, the harbor will forget your name. You don't know whether that's a warning or a gift. You ask, quietly, what happens if I stay? The water stills for a moment, then answers with your own voice, slower, heavier. You will belong to the windless hours. The phrase settles in you, slipping into the spaces between heartbeats. You think of the lantern on your wrist, how it warmed without reason, how it swung without wind. Perhaps this is the same language. The tide's voice shifts, becoming quieter. It speaks in half phrases now, images rather than explanations. The knot on the bone charm will loosen. The door in the hull will remember you. The sky will lean lower, just enough for you to hear its hinge. You close your eyes. The rhythm moves through you, curling around your ribs like a tide curling around stone. It feels less like you are hearing, and more like you are being read. When you open your eyes, the circles on the water have grown wider, but the center is perfectly still. That stillness feels like an invitation. You glance behind. The deck is empty. Only the slow breath of the ship, the soft pulse of rigging. You could climb down, step into the boat tethered at the side, follow the sound to where the water folds over itself. But something holds you where you stand. Not fear. Something more like the mirror's patience. The voice speaks again, but now it's not repeating you. It's ahead of you, giving you words you haven't thought yet. The next moon will carry a door on its back. Stand where the bow meets the dark, and you will step through it. You ask, and if I don't? The tide answers without pause. Then you will be the lantern left behind. The air between you and the water is warmer now, as if the ship itself is leaning in to listen. A low creak runs through the hull, matching the tide's rhythm perfectly. The voice fades to a hum, a low vibration you can feel in your teeth. You know it's still speaking. But now the words are for the ship alone. Whatever is being decided is not for you to overhear. The circles on the water slow, becoming wider, softer. The still center begins to ripple, not from movement beneath, but from the fog itself lowering into it. The mist sinks like cloth into a basin, and for a moment you glimpse something below. A light, faint and gold, like the glow through the porthole of the low house. On the pale beach dot it fades. The tide smooths. And with that, the voice is gone. You stay at the rail for a long moment after, waiting for it to return. But the water is only water again. The ship shifts, its deck tilting gently, as if stretching after holding still too long. When you finally turn away, you notice the lantern charm on your wrist is warm again, ticking softly against your skin. You lift it. The glass in its frame holds a single drop of water, clear, perfectly still, resting there as though the tide left it for you to keep. You walk back across the deck, and with each step, the drop trembles, but never falls. The fog has changed. It no longer crowds the masts or presses against the rail. Instead, it hangs in long, patient ribbons, moving only when the ship's breath tells it to. The air is damp, but warmer than before, as if the night has decided to hold you close for this last part. You walk slowly toward the starboard rail, past the place where the lantern swung earlier, past the coiled ropes that sleep in their circles like tame snakes. Your hand finds the railing automatically. The wood is smooth, but beneath the polish you feel the lines of work it has done. The silent strain of all the tides it has met and not argued with. There it is, the mooring rope, the only thing keeping the ship to the pier. It stretches taut, fibers swollen from years of salt and rain. Its weave darkened to the color of wet stone. At the pier's end, the rope disappears into a knot, not a sailor's quick, working knot, but something more deliberate, a knot made to last. Each crossing of the rope lies snug against the next. A pattern that holds more meaning than utility, like handwriting written for a single reader. You crouch beside it. The knot smells faintly of smoke and rosemary, as if someone tied it over a small fire in some other time. Your fingers press into its surface, cool, unyielding. And yet you feel a slow hum under the texture, a quiet vibration that matches the ship's heartbeat. You look toward the pier. Its lamps burn faintly, some no more than weak halos in the fog. One flickers and dies, and you see how the darkness swells to take its place. The wood of the pier is pale now, bleached in the dim, as though the tide has already begun to drink it away. Behind you, the ship leans ever so slightly. The gentle tip of someone shifting in their sleep. The deck creaks, not complaint, but the sound of readiness. The journal under your arm is warm. You open it to the last filled page, but there are no instructions for this moment. Only a small salt stain where no words were written, as if the ship meant for you to decide this part alone. You slip your fingers into the first loop of the knot. The rope resists, holding to the post with the polite stubbornness of something doing its job. Then, slowly, the fibers give. They rasp softly against one another, and the hum in your fingertips deepens, as though the rope is speaking its long memory before letting go. The first loop falls loose. The ship shifts beneath. You, turning the smallest fraction toward open water. The pier groans, wood stretching, testing whether it will call you back. It doesn't. You pause with the second loop half undone, your palm resting against the cool braid. The knot feels older than the ship itself, as though it once tied something else. Somewhere far from water, you imagine the same knot in red thread closing a book, in a piece of hair ribbon binding a letter. Knots can remember more than one life. You look up. The fog has drawn back from the water, forming a pale corridor ahead of the bow. It curves gently out to sea, a path with no visible end. The thought of following it feels less like a choice, and more like recalling something you already. Promise. Your fingers finish the second loop. The rope loosens further, its voice in your hands becoming quieter now, like someone speaking from another room. Only one turn of the knot remains. The ship waits without moving. Even the tide stills. You feel the attention of everything aboard. The wood, the air, the quiet spaces between planks. Gathering here, around this single act, you take a breath, and the rope exhales with you. When you pull the last turn free, the knot collapses in your hands, not with force, but with a grace that feels rehearsed. The rope slithers from the post, snaking back across the deck. It slips over the side and disappears into the dark water without a sound. The ship exhales. It is a sound you hear and feel both. A long, deep release through every part of its frame. The deck rises under your feet, lightened. The gap between ship and pier begins to widen, inch by inch, without the touch of an oar or the push of wind. You keep one hand on the rail, watching the pier pull away. Its lamps shrink to faint points. The shapes of the buildings blur, edges swallowed by the fog. Soon even the tallest roofline is gone. The shore has accepted your leaving without a word. You glance toward the bow. The corridor of mist ahead is still there, and now the ship begins to follow it. The water makes no noise around the hull, only a deep, slow pulse, like a sleeping heart deciding to keep dreaming. The journal is still under your arm. You open it again, and this time, words are there. You have already left. The ink is wet enough to shine, as though it had waited until now to exist. You close the book. The charm at your wrist sways, and you notice something caught inside its glass frame. A single drop of water, clear, still. It clings to the center, as though the tide itself placed it there for you. The fog ahead begins to shift its edges, curling away to reveal more of the open sea. The horizon is without line, only a merging of deep blue and silver gray. You think of the carved stones on the pale beach, the glowing window in the low house, the tide speaking in your voice. All of it feels near now, as if the moment you step ashore, it will be waiting. The ship moves steadily, following the pale path the fog has drawn. You feel the motion under your feet. But it is so smooth you could almost believe you are standing still, and the rest of the world is drifting toward you. Behind, there is nothing. No pier, no lights. Only the memory of the knot's cool weight in your palm, and the way the rope let go without anger. You rest both hands on the rail, and let the air touch your face. It is salt and something faintly sweet, a scent you can't name, but that feels like recognition. The charm stops swaying. The ship's rhythm steadies into a pulse that matches your own. Whatever lies ahead has not decided its shape. It will decide when you arrive. And you are ready to see it, even if it is nothing you expect. The last of the harbor's memory fades behind you, and the night, patient, breathing, watchful, closes in just enough to carry you forward as though you have always belonged here. The ship's motion slows, not to stop, but to settle, like a long breath finding its place in the dark. The horizon remains formless, the sea and the sky joined in quiet agreement. You stand at the rail, feeling the wood warm from your touch, listening for the tide's voice. But tonight it is silent, content to let the silence speak for it. The journal rests under your arm, its weight familiar now, not heavy, not light, but right, a balance, the way. A lantern hangs steady. Once the wind dies, the air is smooth, and in it you hear the kind of quiet that remembers you, the kind that keeps your shape long after you have stepped away. Somewhere in that quiet, the carved stones wait on. The pale shore, the low house keeps its window lit. The lantern charm at your wrist holds its one clear drop of water, and none of it asks you to hurry. You close your eyes, and the hollow closes its arms around you. No edges, no blocks, no weight, only the steady rhythm of a ship that will carry you until the next shore decides to appear. If sleep comes, it will come like this. Quiet as rope slipping free, steady as tide moving under moonlight, gentle as a lantern swinging without wind. The hollow is always here, just beyond the veil, waiting. The tale has ended. Now sleep. If you can, I'll be just beyond the veil listening.